A local specialty that I just wouldn't dare miss. When I'm in Boston, it's one of Todd English's really great restaurants, either Olives or Figs. Luckily today, I don't have to even leave my kitchen because Todd is here to share his technique for the pizza dough that can become a buttery tart and much, much more. All I have to do is set my oven to 500 degrees and heat the baking stone. Well, Todd English has 3 sayings when it comes to the pizza he makes at his restaurants. And Todd, what are those 3 sayings?
Well, never too rich and never too thin. And
that sounds like a lady.
It does kind of society. Never trust around pizza, which is another thing that and less is more.
Basic tenets of pizza making. And Todd is here today to make some of the most delectable pizzas that I've ever had and some signature recipes from both of his acclaimed restaurants, Olives and Figs.
That's right.
So you've been expanding so greatly. You have 8 restaurants now.
I try to keep it somewhat under control. I mean, we've just recently opened 3 of them, so it's been a little crazy.
Here in Westport, we've been waiting for a restaurant like Miramar, and we finally have one. The fig pizza with prosciutto is so good. I go there just for that. So let's start with pizza because that dough that you have is excellent. It's tender and it's crispy and it's thin.
This is
3.5
cups of just all-purpose flour and 1/4 cup of whole wheat flour. That gives it a nice little chew, a little density in the dough, which I like. This is about 1/4. How much is that? 2 teaspoons of sugar. You can tell how many times I use recipes in the kitchen here. And then I've got about 2 teaspoons of kosher salt that go in as well. And all that goes in to mix all the dry ingredients and just get that going.
And then the yeast, do we put the yeast in the water?
Yeah, the yeast goes in as well. No, the yeast actually goes in right in as well.
So how much yeast?
This is what the yeast looks like if you've ever seen this whole distance. Yeah, the cake yeast. I mean, the dry yeast works as well, but I really like using the fresh yeast if you can use that.
I do too, and it's so fragrant.
Yeah, you can really smell it, and it gives it seems to be just a much sort of fresher, yeastier flavor in the dough. And just start bringing everything together. And this is a very wet dough. And the wet dough really allows the pizza to become very crisp, but also very light.
And full of air.
And full of air.
Yeah.
So, and you want it nice and crisp and sort of just the right amount of topping, and I'll show that. So we're just going to...
So about 1 2/3 cups of water?
And I even put a little bit more in there because I like it to be a little bit wetter, and then I work it down with the flour later on. And this is lukewarm, so it really gets the yeast going and the sugar and brings everything together. So I put in about 2 tablespoons of nice extra virgin olive oil. And we're going to let this go, 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So in the meantime, we should go over and make the jam.
Okay, great. Fig jam.
I remember my first true encounter with this great combination of figs and prosciutto, which was in Italy, in Tuscany, and they had these beautiful sweet figs that were smaller than this, and they came in a basket. And they cut the Parma prosciutto and sliced it very thin and took these little figs and put it on top. It is the most amazing combination in the world, and it makes so much sense.
But using the dried figs, so it enables you to use them all year round, right?
That's right, and it's really, the sweetness is wonderful in these. It's very concentrated.
Want me to cut them up?
Sure, that'd be great. Cut those up. We can use a few more. And I'll take a little bit of oil while the pan heats up. So we heat that up. We have the shallots. This is about...
So what kind of oil is that?
3 tablespoons of shallots, just a little bit of canola oil. See, we just sort of sweat the shallots out a little bit there. And you want a just nice, dry, fruity red wine to go in there. Put that in like that. Cup of red wine and about 3/4 of a cup of balsamic vinegar.
Oh, great. Oh, that's good.
This is sort of what gives it sort of the sweet and sour aspect of it, or the acid aspect of this. Kind of cuts the richness of the figs and the richness of the prosciutto as well. So you've got all these.
But it's still rich. I love that taste.
Remember the saying: never too rich, never too thin, right? So there we go. And that goes in. All right, and we have about a cup of chicken stock, or if you don't want to use chicken stock in this, water is perfectly fine. And that goes in as well. And I think you can put in about a tablespoon of chopped rosemary. So it works really well with the figs, the nice sort of piney flavor of it as well.
Just throw that in?
That's great. Okay. And we'll toss the figs in. It's about a cup of chopped, diced, dried mission figs. Oops, I almost forgot the sugar.
Oh, don't do that.
Don't want to forget the sugar. Got to bring all those flavors together.
So we just let that cook down?
Yeah, about by half it reduces down. You still want some of the syrup, so you can spread that on the pizza as well. And our dough, which is perfect, Nice and sort of soupy here. Don't be afraid to use a lot of flour, because it does take a lot of flour. You don't want this to stick to the counter. And just put a nice pile of that out. The same flour that we used before. This is the fun part. You get to dive right into this. You can just sort of spoon that out onto the counter. Like that. And what I do is just start working it around a little bit, and I need a little bit, just a little bit on the board, but not long. Just incorporate it so that you can cut through it. And I just cut this into 4 sort of blobs.
That's what they are.
They are blobs.
But they're nice blobs. Oh.
You know, this dough it's very versatile. There's a lot of different things you can do.
I think that we have been taught too much about making the dough too dry.
Too dry, right.
Because the focaccia doughs that I've been learning from people are wet.
Right.
That's why they're so good.
Very wet dough. And that's how you get that nice spring or those big holes in the dough. Just sort of onto the board like that. This actually works really well for focaccia.
So telephone's ringing.
Hello. Right. I'm stuck to the phone. Yeah. That's when you have the speakerphone.
So what do? We'll just run.
You have to turn all the phones off in the house.
And cover this up with a damp
nice
cloth?
damp towel.
Okay.
And you're ready to go. You should let that sit for 2 hours until it doubles in bulk.
Okay.
And ready to go.
More signature secrets from Chef Todd English. Coming up next.
Well, our baking stone is heating in the oven, and Todd is autographing his books for me. 2 really interesting books that I think you'll really enjoy. One's called The Olives Table, and the newest book is called The Figs Table. And this one has lots and lots of extraordinary pizza recipes that I think you'll really enjoy making. And you say this one's outselling this book now.
It's actually, yeah, it's amazing. I'm really fascinated with how many people are actually making pizza at home now and how interested they are in this.
Oh,
this
they
book.
are. Well,
Yeah,
I think once they taste it, they'll make every version. So let's get back to
Yes.
Thank you. Let's get back to our pizza.
Okay. The recipe actually makes 4. We have a couple of the doughs here, and you can see how they've poofed up here a little bit. They've risen for 2 hours.
So they're no longer that soupy dough, but they're still moist.
They're still nice and moist on the inside, and when we roll these out, you'll see what I mean. So you'll have to really flour the board.
This is very good to see how wet it really is when it starts, and then what happens to it.
Yeah, it's people are afraid of it. When I teach my cooks the same thing, the pizza cooks, they're still afraid to work with it too wet. So again, this is a very tender dough when it's all said and done, and very wet. And we won't throw it or stretch it or do anything fancy other than just give it a roll. You can also just sort of stretch it with your hands, but I find the rolling pin makes it a little more consistent in its
But not round.
But not round, right? We just sort of give it one.
Never
sort of,
trust a round pizza.
We just sort of give it a swoop and then throw it onto the
Rule number 2.
pizza peel. And again, I put a little bit more flour on it. Again, just continue to stretch it out. I start it with that, and then you can almost see the peel through it, but you don't want it to be a cracker. No, that's one thing. A cracker is not what we're looking for here, because you want that nice little crunch and that chew in that pizza.
Yeah, you want it to hold the filling too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
the
there's all those different flavors of it. So
okay.
There we go.
Well, now can I try one?
Sure.
And the peels are very important too, to have a peel and a stone.
Peel and a stone. Always work on wood. If you don't have a peel, sometimes I've used cardboard boxes. You can cut those out and slide it off that way as well. That's another.
So if you're on
a budget or you've forgotten the peel.
So that's nice.
That's the perfect one. Then and once you get it on the peel, you just want to give it a little shake to make sure that it's not stuck. You have enough flour on there.
Mine's good.
At this point, you're ready to go.
Okay. And now what's the first step in topping it? All
right. A little bit of olive oil here. The olive oil helps also to tenderize it and give it a nice little mouthfeel, and helps in the crispness as well. So just a little bit of that, and you can just spread it around a little bit with your fingers. Now the fig jam, this is cooled, and this is what we saw cooking earlier, and it was cooked down by half. We've cooled it down. We're going to just put a little bit of this on. Again, one thing about the pizzas here is that really it's about the balance of all the ingredients. And I say, be bold in the books when you're saying this. Try putting a little less, because the tendency, especially if you're doing a tomato sauce, or sort of the more traditional ones, is to want to put a lot of sauce on, and what that ends up doing is really just sort of wilting the crust. So you just want to take a little bit of that, and this will spread out as it cooks, and you have a little bit of the gorgonzola. This is the dolce, the sweet gorgonzola, and you just take a little bit of this and just dollop it around the pizza. Too much of this will take away from all the other flavors that you're trying to bring out in this. The sweet jam, the nice sweet prosciutto.
So delicious.
This is some rosemary. I'll chop a little bit of that for us to put on. And this also works extremely well with all these flavors. Always a little seasoning. I always put a little salt and pepper on it as well. And the salt helps to bring out the sweetness again and all those flavors. And the pepper, of course, goes really well with the prosciutto.
Very beautiful.
And a little bit of rosemary. All right, just like that. Spread very nicely. And what we'll do at this point, again, give it another shake. Make sure that it doesn't stick. And we'll take it over to our ovens. So throw that in the top there. That's been heating for about an hour or so. Right? Yeah, you want to make sure. And the heat is a very important part of cooking pizzas, and that's why the stone works, because you're creating this nice ceramic heat. All right.
These are really gorgeous.
All right, so now...
I think there's some mouths watering back there on this.
So now what you do is just drape that over the top. Well, I'll cut some scallions. This pizza, we do not cook the prosciutto. The warmth of the pizza just warms this slightly and just really brings the nice flavors out, the sweetness of the prosciutto. So you can see those pizzas took about 5 minutes to cook. The stone helps to really create it. Also, another thing I look for in a pizza is you can see, you can hold this up and you can see the brownness like that.
There's nice brown on the bottom.
Right, and you can hold this very nice and light and crisp. And just cover that, and then what I'll take is this nice finely chopped scallion over the top there. And you know what? If you grab a little more olive oil, that's another thing that I'll put a little bit over the top of that. I call this an Italian French knife. Because it's what they use in the pizzerias, yes. It's great. Through the pizza like that. And I like a nice big wedge of the pie.
I'm just going to take a bite. It's really firm.
Right, and it doesn't droop over with too much sauce.
Well, thank you very much.
My
this
pleasure.
is great. Well, another amazing thing about this pizza dough is that it can be transformed into a buttery tart dough. Next, another Todd English signature, the olives tart. Can't wait.
All right.